Welcome to the S&M Podcast with Sean Spencer and Misti Spencer. Real talk with real people, discussing some serious and not so serious hot topics. Let's talk. Hey everybody, it is S&M Podcast and I am Misti Spencer.
I am Sean Spencer.
Yes.
And we are S&M.
Yeah, we are. Or Sean and
reverse.
Misti or whatever. Yeah, we always do this. Reverse. I like that. Reverse. So thank you to everybody who's been listening to the podcast, watching the podcast. We've been getting some great feedback and people giving us some ideas. It's been really, really wonderful. So thank you guys for doing that and participating in our podcast. Remember to subscribe and share because without you, we can't get our message out there. So please share it with us. And today, I think we're on episode number 7. What?
Oh, lucky number 7.
Episode number 7.
Yeah.
And this one is called There's Disorder in the House.
There's a lot of disorder
Disorder. Yeah, there's a lot of disorder in this house. And one of those things, it's called dyslexia.
Yeah.
Woot, woot. So dyslexia, really fun topic, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I think I've been talked to about it since I was 5.
Oof, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know about dyslexia when I was a kid. I didn't know if my friends had it. It wasn't diagnosed as often back then as it is now. Science has come a long, long way.
Sure
We found out, dyslexia is really not a visual thing, although we, put it on our vision because we see things and interpret things.
Sure.
But they actually figured out that it's a language processing disorder. And
Okay.
Yeah, huh? What? It is. It's a language processing disorder. And, there's a lot of science to it that shows left side of the brain may have something to do with it. It's linked to ADHD in some cases. So all the science is out there. Go to Dr. Google. If you have questions about what dyslexia is, it's out there. We're not here to give science lessons or be your doctors. By the way, we're not doctors. Disclosure. We are not. So, some of the things that people say about people with dyslexia. Let's talk about that.
You're stupid. You're lazy.
Oof.
You're faking it.
Mm-hmm.
You're. I don't know.
Man,
All kinds of adjectives.
that like hurts my soul. People say that. Did anybody say that to you out loud when you were young?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when I had to participate in reading in class. Now, this is elementary school, so I was still very, very young, and you're still learning to read, and you're not fluid when you read as much when you're in first, second, third grade.
Mm-hmm.
And when it became my turn, and the anxiety built up throughout the time in class, waiting for my turn to be called to read out loud. And I would read my part or the next lines, and I'd fumble around with words. I would fumble around trying to say it fluidly. Anything in my power to get it out the right way would get me through the day. And unfortunately, that just isn't the case, with dyslexia. And like autism, it is a broad spectrum, so it can affect people minimally and devastatingly.
I think it's true to say that everything is a spectrum we have found. Like there's just no definitive symptom for symptom, and that's what you've got. We're in a world of process of elimination almost.
Yeah.
Instead of that quick diagnosis, I see a lot of doctors are reversing that process. But back then, they said you have these symptoms and you're dyslexic.
And I'm dyslexic. So, short story, my mom really worked hard at learning more about dyslexia. Of course, this is pre-internet. So she had to go to the libraries. She went to the libraries at her college and the public libraries to find different books on dyslexia and learn as much about it as she could. And in the evening, she would read to me, and she would ask me to read it back. And the problem is that it isn't the reading, by the way, anymore. As I've grown up, I've learned new techniques to read very quickly. But the thing that really got me when I was younger was that I was not able to comprehend what I was reading because I was using my brain to read the words correctly and not miss the words. And so I really wasn't focused on the subject of what I was reading or the comprehension part. I was really focused on getting it out right.
Yeah.
Out of my mouth right. And because of that, my grades suffered. I had to read things 2, 3, 4 times over to finally get the meaning of what I read. And again, that has changed significantly since, moving through life now, almost 50.
Oh, we have a birthday coming up. This guy's turning 50. Woot, woot. I will say I've known you over 20 years, but I've lived with you almost 20. We'll be married 20 years. So I didn't ever see dyslexia. If my friends had it, I didn't know, and I didn't know anybody close to me. And then you told me about it, and we get married and all that stuff. When you were taking your real estate license exam, and we had just gotten married, we just got pregnant.
This was 20 years ago.
Right. We just got pregnant with Madison, and it was that winter, and you were going to school for your real estate license. Yeah. And that is the first time I got to witness somebody with dyslexia struggle.
Yeah.
You were working, and doing other things, and we had a baby on the way. We just got married, and I'm watching you study and try to interpret that information. As time went on, nighttime came, and I would see that struggle. Tell them a little bit about what that is like for you.
Well, yeah, as you mentioned, the struggle with real estate school. 20 years ago, there was internet. However, what was available in terms of resources, study materials, the actual study materials for real estate school, they weren't really online. In fact, you still had the physical books and, highlighters. Don't ever run out of highlighters. And reading on a piece of paper or in a book for me was just brutal. It took me 3-4 times to read it. So, already I'm behind the 8 ball just starting.
Yeah.
It's going to take me 4 times longer to read it and understand it than the next person. So what I did was I read it 4 times, and it took all of that time to get through it. I did the crash, the 40-hour class. I think I did it in a 1 week.
Yeah, you did a 1 week crash course.
Yeah. And then right before the state test, after I passed the course, I took another crash course, a 1-night crash course the night before the actual state exam. So for me, I had to work 3 or 4 times more and harder to comprehend what I was reading. It's not, I don't have a disability in understanding things.
Yeah, it's not an intelligence thing.
It's not. It's the process of which your brain takes the information that you're reading and disseminates it. There's a breakdown of wiring there, and it jumbles things up. It moves things around, and can make letters look backwards and whatnot. Obviously, they're not backwards on the page, so it is definitely a processing issue, not my ability to learn things, because obviously I can learn things pretty quickly. But
he's actually one of the smartest people. It's so funny because Sean doesn't realize how smart he really is. And we have talked about like the how people think, you're lazy or not smart or intellectual and all that stuff. So intellectual. We play Jeopardy often. We play Jeopardy as if we're on Jeopardy. I'm sorry. We sit on our couches with our dogs and our popcorn and our treats, and we watch Jeopardy 4 hours. We've discussed this. And he's reading, usually while we're watching Jeopardy. He's also listening to me say my little things, on the side. Dogs are walking around. And he has a delayed response to a Jeopardy question. He's like, oh, man, just one more second. I'm like, do you realize what you're doing with your brain, though? It took me years to say, hey, you actually would know most of these if you just watched them, and you did. And you found that's how smart you were, though, when you were paying just attention to what they were asking.
Sure.
Ooh. So it's not the intelligence factor.
No, I've learned very complex things in life. It is a processing situation, and fortunately there are newer tools out. In fact, a few years ago, I was utilizing some of those tools that doctors had found, and essentially it teaches you how to read differently so that you can read more quickly, like speed reading almost, but also understand what it is that you're reading, the subject matter or the comprehension part. Yeah. And so I started doing that. It was actually during COVID, I believe. And within probably just a couple days, I found that I was reading far more material, probably 2-3 times more material in the same amount of time that I was sitting and reading than I did before.
So basically, during COVID, I got drunk and he treated his dyslexia. That's really the moral of that story. He's like, yeah, I think it was during COVID. In the last podcast, I just talked about having a breakdown during COVID. You're like, I think I treated my dyslexia and I read 3 or 4 times faster.
Well, COVID was kind of a long time, so a lot of stuff happened in there.
It was a long time.
Yeah.
It was. So let's talk about how this impacted you, especially as a man. We talk about a lot of the male facade and how, and you've been posting a lot about this lately, posting more stuff about how men in particular are treated and how you hide, how men hide things, and women are seemingly more expressive. We just express differently. Men express a lot with anger and aggressiveness. So talk a little bit about just general labels and how it affects you as a man.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Men, it's pretty difficult. And, I'm not taking anything away with the difficulties women have, because I think you guys have it way worse than us in a lot of different key areas.
No, but don't worry about us.
In terms of men, I think society has done a pretty darn good job at depicting men as the strength physically. And, well, I mean, that's largely a fact.
Naturally factual in a lot of cases.
Yes, in most cases. There are always exceptions to the rule. Xena, warrior princess, you're one of them. I know you can kick my ass. But my point is that that's what society has conditioned us to believe.
Right.
Through movies, through writing, through commercials, is
men are big, women are little.
Right.
That's just what we've been taught, which is furthest thing from the truth.
Right. And so have you ever seen a commercial for, gutters, special gutters that only let the water in and they don't collect all the debris and stuff like that?
Yeah, the leafer or whatever.
How many guy techs have you seen on those commercials? No. But I'll bet you there are female techs in that business. 100%. I 100% believe that.
Oh, yeah.
So my point is that society does a good job, and I mean that it's not good, but they do a good job at depicting what men should be and what women should be.
Yes, I actually mentioned to you the other night, we were watching I think it was Dr. Phil, and Dr. Shelfie was on there, and I actually had forgotten how much this person impacted me, and what she talks about, exactly that, because there is this notion of what we live in, this patriarchal society, mm-hmm. and the role of the man and the role of the women and what we've been taught.
Yeah, and I think we have a generation now that is kind of looking at that differently. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that I went and got 4 new tires a week or 2 ago, mm-hmm. and going to the same place I've gone for many, many years down the street. Shout out to Tires Plus. Yep. And great management too.
Hunters Creek Tires Plus here in Orlando.
That's right. There's a plug. And it was late, it got late in the day. They had another car break down when they were test driving it. So there was a lot of stuff going on. I wasn't angry because I knew that stuff happens. Mm-hmm. But they told me that they're not closing the shop until my tires are on and ready to go. And it was actually a female tech that changed my tires. No more than 25 years old. I was so impressed and so honored that we can see females in predominantly male-dominated roles, mm-hmm. in business. I'm happy to see that change, and it's been a long time in the making, and it's taken way too long. But I think society and the way that it depicts how life should be is something that's should be subjective. We should all be thinking about that.
I'm trying to get away from shoulds altogether. This is what I want to do. Yeah. I want to do this. I should do this just gives me guilt. So I've been working on the I should have, I should be, I want to, I am going to.
Right. And saying that society or that people should mm-hmm. question what society.
They push it into us.
Yeah, they really do. And they're effective at it. And so we need to undo that. It's kind of like, undoing a child's behavior when they come out of a slumber party for the weekend at a friend's house who has no rules at their house. You got to reprogram them when they come back.
Yes. I think a lot of split families feel that when you have blended families and your kids are going from house to house, right.
And we just need to recognize that just because society paints this picture doesn't mean that we have to adhere to it.
Not at all.
You must find what makes you happy. You must find what you want to do, and screw society for mm-hmm. anything that it tells you should or shouldn't be doing.
I say find your natural tendencies. It's something I've been pushing a lot lately. Yeah. People say, "Oh, how do you redesign your life? I don't understand this." And I have to come back and go, well, it is really about having intention. You intentionally do things. I am going to, mm-hmm. and all of that, but doing what you naturally do. If you naturally gravitate towards something, then that's what you should be doing. But our families tell us, it's something Dr. Shelfie talks about. They tell you have to be a doctor because that's what you do. That's what success is. I was told I wanted to be a teacher. Since I was a little girl, I was like, I either want to be a stand-up comedian or a teacher. I know, it's a thing. And so I was told teachers don't make money. Teachers don't make money. And it kept pushing me further and further away of what I naturally do. Sure. I'm a natural teacher. Mm-hmm. I teach meditation and yoga and life coaching is teaching. And not going towards your natural tendencies harms you.
I couldn't agree more.
And so that woman working at Tires Plus, she loves mechanics. She got into it for a reason. It's her natural tendencies against society.
Yes. And I was so shocked in a very positive way and high-fived, the good job manager for even hiring her.
Ooh.
I said that's a whole nother podcast. But oh yeah, discrimination exists. Sure.
It does. And even
why though? Because society says it should.
Even hearing those words come out of your mouth, like, thank you for hiring a woman. I get where that comes from. But as a woman, like, my whole nervous system reacted, because it shouldn't be, look at you hiring women. Like, that's such a bullshit concept.
It is.
How about you just hire the best person for the job? Yeah. Good job hiring the best person. But we're so trained when a woman's doing a man's job.
Yeah.
Or when a man's emotional.
Very true. So we men, society says we're tough and don't show your weakness and all that stuff. I've touched on that in previous podcasts, and that's really what it is. It's you're afraid to expose your weaknesses, and it is a weakness to a point.
Well, evolution says so.
Yes. and so there is. I do have to reread things sometimes, a couple times, especially if it's really, really highly detailed, highly what's the word? Difficult.
Like wordy?
Certainly wordy legal jargon or scientific jargon. If I'm reading an article in Scientific American or some other publication, and it's using words that I've never heard of, I go look them up so that I can understand it. So it does take me longer in that regard to learn about new things, new technologies, new sciences, new discoveries. But
you practice every day, though.
Oh, every single day.
You practice. That's the thing I think that also we want to get across, is that you don't just succumb to it. You don't just say, well, I can't.
There was a time that I did. I just thought it wasn't going to get any better. And that was probably in my late teens, early 20s. And, looking back at that time period now, I wasn't very motivated. It was a very difficult time in my life.
Which we've talked about, different occurrences.
Yeah, and on another podcast. But I really wasn't focused on it. And that may be the reason why that was the most difficult period. But as technology changed, the backlighting on computer screens, when they went from tube screens to flat screens, then now you have cell phones with backlit screens at ridiculous resolutions. All those things helped. Instead of reading it on a piece of paper. It gave it depth, and I think that's what really helped me fall in love with reading.
Yeah,
and ever since I got my shot, another podcast, previous podcast. Ever since I got the shot, which helped my PTSD and the pain associated with it, I have all that extra energy, and I, for the first time in my life, had the choice of where to put that energy. And so I divided it up here and there, but the big lion's share went to reading. Because I spent an entire lifetime avoiding reading certain things, or things that were more complicated to understand because of that, and because of that frustration. So applying those skills, applying the skills that I learned for dyslexics to learn to read faster, but also comprehend what they're reading at the same time and faster. Since employing those after my shot, it's just the amount of knowledge that I crave has grown exponentially.
I've seen that over the last year, where it's just like you're hungry.
Yeah, that's why I'm reading something for the first time. I've never heard of it in my life while I watch Jeopardy.
Right, it's so funny. And then he's like, "Oh, I didn't answer that in half a second. Oh, okay," which I find so funny. I want to wrap up with this because I do think it's important to say that the work that goes into trying to get better at something and all of that. Yeah. It is frustrating for many, but I think it's proof that if you just take one step further and then take another step, I know that the shot is a huge factor in that. But again, the shot didn't change it didn't change the reactivity. It didn't change the dyslexia. No. It didn't change the irritability or moods or restlessness or the other things.
No, it gave me more processing power because I wasn't using that processing power on depression and anxiety, and the pain associated with PTSD. Right. I'm able to allocate that energy to something positive and helpful.
Right.
And I just would like to say one last thing that, as I mentioned before, dyslexia is a huge spectrum. People that could have very little, maybe when they're really tired or it's too bright out or something, all the way to they can't read at all. And we've watched documentaries on dyslexia. There's a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech company that can't read at all and has an assistant that reads every piece of paper that comes across his desk.
Wow.
And he's the CEO. He started it, he built it, and he runs a multi-billion-dollar company, and he can't read a thing at all. That's incredible. That's the extreme dyslexia. I'm not there. I fall somewhere in the middle.
Einstein couldn't tie his shoes.
Yeah.
So literally that's usually when you're really exponential in one side. We see that in autism.
Yeah, you're super intelligent on one side. And
you have deficits in some and then you're exponential in others.
Superpower on others.
Yeah. So as we close up dyslexia, I know it's hard to talk about some of these things and all of that, but I think we're kind of through a lot of the hard stuff. It was hard for us to even do this podcast. I think we were both feeling tension and irritability and
a lot.
Yeah, we got in a little tiff. It was fun and fiery. Yeah, it was. I mean, but it's the truth. I want to talk about the truth.
It is.
The truth is that
these are hard things to talk about.
These are hard things to talk about. And we talk about intention and purpose. Our purpose in doing these things is to tell other people that there's struggles out there, but there's ways to move through them. However, we're not staying here forever, Sean.
No. And also I would like to say that those who know us know that we love to do karaoke. We're up on a stage. That's old hat for us. So being in front of a microphone and looking at a camera and at each other, being recorded, it's easier for us than for a lot of other people who don't have that experience of being on a stage in front of people and putting themselves out there. I will say that talking about this particular subject is very difficult for me.
I think doing this podcast has been one of the most difficult things to do, to sit alone in a room with you and microphones and a camera and discuss the hardest things in our lives has been, for me, kind of like, wow, it's been overwhelming a little bit. It's the hardest thing. You don't realize how hard this is to do until you do it. You would think we were going live on television, like with thousands of people watching us. Literally, nobody's watching this right now. And so when they do watch it, it just is what it is. But we're doing this with purpose and intention. However, are you ready for next week?
Oh, God.
Episode 8. Right? I'm so excited.
The Ocho.
Yes, it is Ocho. Because we're moving out of us and now we're moving into opinion territory. We might see some fire because we're not preparing. So next week, episode number 8, it is called Double Chins and Silicon Valley. Woot, woot, woot.
Wow.
Do with it what you will. I know what I'm coming to the table with. But we're talking about double chins in Silicon Valley next week. There's a lot of stuff going on out there in the world right now.
Yeah, no doubt.
And when we said we're talking about some serious and not so serious issues, that's what we're talking about. So please tell others about it. Tell us what you would like to see on the show. If there's other subjects that you want to talk about, we're really excited because we're getting ready to do our first interview podcast with Cryo, our friend over at the Cryo. It's called Move Labs. Yep. We have some exciting news also coming out of Move Labs. I can't wait to tell you, but stay tuned. Yes, stay tuned.
So we'll be talking with Joel.
And we will be talking with Joel, and that's in a few episodes, 2 or 3 episodes from now. But we're starting to get into interview mode, start bringing new people in. So if you're interested in being on a podcast and you have purpose and intention and a message that you want to share out to others, that's what we want to. Yes, we're here to help people. But if you want to challenge us. If you want to get into it, let's get into it. There are no rules. There is no good or bad or wrong or right. We're here just to move through it together. Yeah. So with that, I say thank you again for listening. Thanks for checking into S&M Podcast. High five, Mr. Spencer. We made it through. Man, it's been tough.
This was a tough one.
And we will see you guys next week.
I'm going to go crawl into the fetal position.
Right.
Suck my thumb.
I'm going to eat ice cream. This is ridiculous. Ice cream for dinner. Boop, boop, boop. Yeah. We'll see you next time.
I'll eat it with my thumb.
Perfect.
Yeah, awesome.
I love it. All right. See you guys.
Bye.